Start with Lowell Herrero, a graphic designer and painter. Add the fact that he's a sports nut with a great deal of success as a designer of calendars, and what you come up with is obvious. A sports calendar. Better yet, a combination of schedule and calendar. Something with graphic unity.
Schedules are so darn hard to read. These little pocket-sized things, you know. So I thought that if a person had a decorative type schedule, he'd want to hang it on the wall. And that way he'd know where his team was, who they were playing, when, and so on and so forth. And it also would become a decorative item. After I had gotten it worked out, well, I thought, gee, wouldn't it be great to be able to keep scores? So that even made it doubly valuable to keep.
So he started into it. He discussed it with anyone who'd listen. His wife, friends, everybody thought it was a great idea, especially the part about having a place to write in the scores. That seemed to pull the whole thing together. So he started into layouts, sketches, and roughs, and began to show these around. And that's where he had a little trouble.
I had a few problems, mainly because I didn't have the contacts. Who do you go to, when you have something like this? Which is, you can have a world beater of a product, but if it doesn't get the exposure or the right contacts, it'll just die, like anything else. I don't care how good it is. It has to have the exposure. I don't have the time. I had to do all this on the side, as well as my regular work. So I have my regular work, which is advertising, commercial art.
So many things to be done with so little time. Sponsors, distributors, contacts, knocking on doors. It's frustrating. And finally, the project got set aside.
It just gathered dust for all this time until I met this attorney. John McGuin is his name, through a mutual friend of ours. Our mutual friend had told John about this calendar, and he said, geez, I'd like to see it. And with that, he came over to the studio and saw it and saw what he liked. He says, geez, have you tried to sell this? And I said, well, not really. I've shown it to a lot of people and nothing happened. So he said, do you mind if I take it? So I said, no, go ahead. Be my guest. So he took the calendar and started making the rounds of various clients, sponsors, possible sponsors, and got a lot of good reaction. Quite a few of them expressed interest in it. So with a combination of John and myself, me creating, producing, and John selling, was great. And that's really the way it all started. We formed a company and we called ourselves Sports Calendars Company, which is apropos.
That's the background, what it took to get the project off the ground. Now, let's look at how the schedule calendar was developed into the finished product. Start with the concept.
And I just felt, right from the very beginning, there wasn't any question in my mind that it should be nostalgia. That struck me as being apple pie, flags, cross bats, eagles, nostalgia thing. And it just lent itself to it. I was searching in my own mind for a format, a good workable format. I had to simplify that whole thing. And that's when I came up with the baseballs, the round circles. I completed a page of white circles, just a very rough form. And sure enough, it worked. Once I establish the concept that I think that I will work, then I carry it a step further. I get into more detail. Once I had established the concept and had worked out all the little details, then it was a matter of how many pages are we going to use. I had worked it out where we could get all this on 3 sheets of paper. And Then I proceeded to make a mock-up, an actual dummy. And I really have to work out every detail because I want to see if it's going to work or not. I want to see it all worked out, and I have to do it by hand.
When Lowell is satisfied with the design and layout, John McGuin uses the mock-up to tie down the details of sales, distribution, licensing, and contracts. And then the mechanical drawings are started. For this phase of the work, Lowell and John obtain the services of Debbie Bristow, a graphics artist and a skilled professional. Using the mock-up as a guide, Debbie obtains the type proofs required for the paste ups of team logos, symbols, numbers, and other special items. This work is carefully checked against the mock-up and sketches for size and design, and is coordinated with Lowell, who at this time is beginning his paintings. Because of a special antiquing process to be used, he will do the paintings on rusty metal.
It's a different sensation working on that surface. I've worked on a lot of things. All kinds of surfaces, wood, glass, metal, canvas, illustration board. It's so much fun to paint on. It really is. It covers a multiple of sins. You can get away with a lot. You throw caution to the wind. You can just paint loose and feel good and relaxed. And if you do make a mistake, you can cover it up very easily on the metal. Once I've traced it down, then I begin to paint. When I do apply the paint to the metal, I paint as bright as I can get it. And I usually paint in layers. The reason for doing that is so that when we do antique it, a lot of the paint will start to peel away, and then you get the underpainting.
Debbie now starts the artwork for the various emblems, logos, numbers, and other items which she will need for her mechanical drawings and paste-ups. The typesetting work is cut and respaced to match the emblems of each of the teams appearing on the calendar. To ensure a perfect match of the emblems, she works from photographs and other information supplied to her by the individual teams. Working through a series of negative and positive photostats, Debbie adds the special line work required and realigns the lettering. This process is continued until she arrives at an exact duplicate of the team emblems, reduced to the size required for her paste-ups. These are set aside for future use. Her job requires long hours of delicate and detailed work, as she must not only do the team emblems, but must make ready for paste-up the numbers, symbols, and printed information which will appear on the finished schedule calendar. This results in a mountain of negatives, positives, enlargements, and reductions.
People have asked me, well, what sort of paint do you use because of the abuse that it takes, It's just nothing but acrylic paint, which is a plastic paint. And I find that stuff is so amazing. It takes an awful beating. And I've been asked the question, well, do you use a primer before you apply the final coat? No, just paint right on raw metal. And that just amazes a lot of my contemporaries. They can't believe it. You're kidding. No. Try it. You'll like it.
By now, Debbie and Lowell are deeply into their work. As the work goes on, John and Lowell review the progress, as both printing and sales must be closely coordinated with the completion of the art. Debbie, too, meets with Lowell. The progress of her work is reviewed, and any questions she may have about the layouts are discussed in detail. Since the calendar features the schedule of the San Francisco Giants, Lowell and John request a review of the schedule by a member of the Giants organization. And the Giants are extremely cooperative in providing the up-to-date schedules and checking the accuracy of the work. Now it's just a matter of long, hard work until Debbie has completed her pay-stuffs and Lowell's paintings are ready for antiquing. Debbie, when through, will have prepared one mechanical drawing for each of the pages of the calendar. These mechanical drawings will be used by the printer to prepare his printing plates. Lowell, meanwhile, has reached the stage where the paintings are ready for the antiquing process. He's painted brightly and in layers, resulting in a flat, poster-like look, soon to be completely changed. The antiquing is extremely risky, as the results are purely accidental and completely without control. The fear exists that the paintings will be destroyed and will have to be redone, but what can result makes the gamble worth taking. So Lowell gathers up the paintings and takes them to the studio of sculptor Tom Brown, where, under Lowell's supervision, the antiquing begins. The first thing is to burn the top layer of pigment by using a relatively cold torch. Next, the pigment is further broken down by rubbing on liquid sulfur diluted with water. As the heat and the sulfur react differently with each of the various colors, the painting begins to lose its uniform appearance. As more sulfur is added, a hot torch is used to eat into the paint layers to different levels, sometimes going all the way to the bare, rusty metal.
There's one thing about this technique. The first time we experimented with it, it really shook me up. When you think about the hours that you've spent painting this particular painting, and you take it out to Tom Brown here, and he fires up his torch, and within a minute can destroy the whole thing right before your very eyes.
The painting is now worked over by hand with various materials: sandpaper, steel wool, hammers, whatever is needed to gain the desired effects.
I more or less guide them along and point out the various areas that I want to see pitted more. I try to guide them into giving it an overall feeling to it. And then I try to pick out certain areas that I'd like to see destroyed, so to speak.
The torch is used again, this time to highlight certain areas and to achieve a uniform appearance.
dries it off, and then he applies a fixative to preserve what paint is left. Now he just keeps working over all of them to do it all at once so we can keep that same consistency going. I mean, to do one week and do another one the next week, you forget some of the little things that you applied to the first one and vice versa. So it's better to do them all at once. That way you're more consistent.
They work until all of the paintings have been antiqued. A comparison with their appearance before the antiquing shows how much they've been changed.
We arrived at a point where we figured, well, that's enough, and before I begin to touch it up. So then it's back to the studio and reworking it all over again. It's almost like taking a photograph and retouching it. This is what it all boils down to.
The paintings are now completed and ready for the printer. Again, so we can appreciate what's been done, let's look at some of these before antiquing, after antiquing, and after Lowell's retouching. Before antiquing, after antiquing, and after retouching. Before the printing can be started, there are 2 items left to be done.
In Debbie's case, she has some overlays to do, which is the imprint of the word giants. There I might point out, too, that the word giants, I had that lettered by a specialist who was a very good lettering man, named Chuck Workman. And he lettered it in such a way that it would fit the curvature of the baseball on the cover, which is pretty hard to duplicate if you were to have it set in type. It's almost impossible. So Chuck actually designed it to fit the curvature of the ball itself on the cover. This is just sort of a guideline for the printer. So he will know where the type and all the type in the cover will be placed. It's just a guide for him. There wasn't any National League logo, to my knowledge, So I decided to create one, really for the reason that it would be a nice added addition to the rest of it, which has the old look.
To get a clear, sharp reproduction of this logo, Lowell has the black line drawing reproduced on film. The color work is then done separately under this film on illustration board, so that when he is through, he has the color on the board and the line work on the film. These are handled separately by the printer.
Now the next step was to select the color. Now, if you can recall, the mechanicals are all black and white. All the emblems, the logos, and things of that nature. So what we had to do was color key this. And by color keying, I mean we have a chart, a color chart, which is coded in numbers. And that's the way the whole process was done, on an overlay, indicating just by numbers what color was to go in this designated area.
Now the printing can begin. The first step is the making of the printing plates. The originals of the colored artwork are shot by a special camera through various colored filters. Mechanical drawings and other black and white work are shot through a special amber or combination filter. When this is done, there will be one negative for each of the separated colors, one for the separated blues, one for the separated reds, one for the yellows, and one for the blacks. Before these negatives are used to engrave the printing plates, they are carefully inspected and are retouched by hand to ensure an exact match to the original artwork. The plates are engraved and set into the press in this order: black, blue or cyan, red or magenta, and yellow. The colors are imprinted onto the paper. The white paper is first printed black. Then the blue is added. Then the red. And then the yellow. Black, black, blue, black, blue, red, black, blue, red, yellow. The printing is now started. As the printing is done, proofs are constantly pulled by the pressmen. These proofs are checked for proper density of colors, registration, and quality. Everyone gets into the act, as the highest quality must be obtained.
It was beautiful. Beautiful to see, because they came so close to the original, it wasn't funny. It was just beautiful. And that's what you anticipate, that's what you look forward to, and that's what it's all about. So, after checking it over very carefully, I put my approval on it, and I okay that press sheet. And what that means is the rest of the 50,000 calendars have to come up to that sheet that I approved.
When enough copies have been printed, the binding can be started. The pages are first cut to size. They are then scored for folding. Next, they are machine folded. And finally, they are placed in a machine which collates the pages, binds them with staples, and trims them to finished size. They are then packed into boxes. The calendar is shipped to the various distribution outlets and is also sold at the ballpark, the Giants Candlestick Park.
To launch this momentous occasion, we had selected the San Francisco Boys Club to introduce the calendar to the public. Well, at times you began to, or I did, wonder whether it was worth it all. Would it ever become a realization, you know? Here you have a finished product, it's being sold, it's printed, people are buying it. You know, it's pretty damn rewarding when you know that you've created something and it was nice enough, or at least the public thinks it's nice enough to want to buy it. I can hardly wait to start next year's. Oh.
The lineup for the Giants calendar was as follows. Herrero at artist, John McGuin at business partner, Debbie Bristow at mechanical drawings, Chuck Workman at special lettering, Tom Brown at sculptor and antiquing, Omnicomp at typesetting, Peninsula Lithography at printing and binding, John Tadeucci at Giants representative, the San Francisco Boys Club at sales, and Renee McGuin at narrator. Produced and distributed by Films M.